Hey guys, welcome to TST Garage. I'm Bart, and in this episode, I'll be demonstrating the installation of our new high-performance intake system on the Kawasaki Ninja 400 race bike. This video will serve as the guide for the physical installation on the bike with little to no permanent modifications required. Our other separate feature video will discuss the details of the design and the performance characteristics of the system. Let's quickly brief over a couple of the parameters and then we'll be on to the installation. The product you see in front of me replaces the entire OEM airbox. This is the brainchild of our WORX Racing Technology division. The design reduces component mass and drastically improves motor volumetric efficiency. The mass reduction is achieved through the use of carbon fiber composite and thermoplastics, processed using high-end manufacturing technology. The parameters affecting the increases in power and torque output are as follows. Large frontal opening is directed at a volume of cold air and is able to capture more of that air moving into the bike at speed. The airbox shape and the high flow filter element result in lesser internal flow restriction. The V2 velocity stacks optimize inertial and acoustical supercharging focused on upper rev ranges. Beyond that, the sound this intake produces is very distinct in character. The race-bred aggressive growl is what most people immediately notice at startup. The WORX intake system is designed and intended to be used in a racetrack setting only. It is not approved or meant to be used on public roadways. Additionally, if you are racing in classes such as Super Sport, Super Street, or other limited classes, the use of our intake system may actually get you DQ'd. Please check your race regulation rules. Make sure you're staying within the legality of your class rules. The ABS model of the Ninja 400 is excluded from compatibility here as the ABS pump interferes with the front portion of our airbox. Our intake system comes pre-assembled, armed with our V2 velocity stacks. We redesigned the stacks to optimize power delivery up high in the rev range, where it is most useful in racing. These velocity stacks are also available separately. Some racing organizations like CCS and ASRA deem it illegal to use an airbox modification or replacement for super sport classes, but allow for the replacement of the stacks, so that's why we sell them separately. Our proprietary air filter minimizes flow losses while reducing particle and debris transmission. It comes pre-assembled and pre-oiled, but does require inspection and oiling maintenance after every race weekend. We do have extras in stock in case there is a need for drop-in spares. We have dyno and track tested several trims of Ninja 400 with the WORX intake system, ranging from bone stock motor to super sport spec, and even open class superbike. In every test, the results shared a similar trend of overall performance gains in the effective rev regions. An increase in volumetric efficiency results in more oxygen available in the combustion chamber. This will require more fuel to keep an optimal and safe air-fuel ratio. We highly recommend tuning your bike after installing our WORX intake system. Most highly competitive riders already partner with a reputable dyno facility, so we suggest that the bike be tuned by the tech who knows that particular machine best. If you need just a safe tune that will get the results cited in our published graphs without getting too cutthroat, and your bike meets the criteria for receiving that tune, we will be happy to take in your ECU and flash it with our WORX intake tune. The cost of this service is listed in its own product page on our website. If you have purchased a flash tune from us in the past, the new intake tune will be provided at no additional cost. You just have to cover the charge for shipping to and from. Now let's grab us some parts and tools, get on the bike, and let's start wrenching. Let's go. All right guys, as you can see here, I've already taken off my bodywork and my gas tank. I do not have a global approach to removing these parts. They vary slightly from one build to another. These are custom bikes after all, and they've been gone through by a tech or by you, the owner. So depending on what components you have for the race bodywork, you will know the method necessary to strip them down. At this point here, we'll need to remove the OEM airbox, and we start that by using a 10mm socket up here in this connection. We'll remove this bolt. This will follow by grabbing a 3mm Allen or hex key and undoing the throttle body clamps. We will actually take the throttle body clamps off and reuse them on our new system. Once these have been loosened, The airbox is pretty free to come off. We'll make sure that we have disconnected the sensor connection here in the aft section. And now we can dislodge this off the throttle bodies. And there's another hose under here that will require it to be slipped off the bottom. We keep ours unclamped. If you have a clamp there on that hose, it will need to come off. That's over here. And we have another hose here. This one we do have a clamp on. That comes off. Boom. This guy can go away. Like I mentioned before, we will keep these clamps. And now, quick inspection here, making sure there's no debris in the throttle bodies from the removal. If you do have some, you can grab microfiber and get that stuff out. Up here, you'll notice that we have a bracket, but nothing is attached to it. This OEM bracket that ties the frame from left to right also carries the stock airbox here. This will actually need to be removed. If you have any wiring connected here, I do believe that the ignition switch used to mount to this. We've eliminated that routing. Ours routes through here. We have a custom harness. We also have a standard switch on here instead of a key switch because we've gone away from the stock triple clamp setup. So whatever your setup is, if your throttle cables route through here, there is a provision for the throttle cables to route through here. Whatever happens, make sure that after you remove this, we're not using it again, you route your cables and your wires properly so they don't interfere with anything else. That really needs to be your responsibility. Let's grab a 12mm socket. Let's loosen these fasteners here. And again, I mentioned that we are going to be saving these fasteners. They are going to remount our new airbox to the frame here. All right, I'm going to inspect over here again, make sure that with my new airbox, we won't have any routing issues in here. I'm going to bring this airbox into position here, just make sure that I don't have any interference where I'm going to be mounting it, and that looks good. On my particular bike, I've gone through the frame here and I've modified a lot of it. I've removed all of the tabs that are unnecessary. On a lot of these bikes from the factory, there is a tab here in this location on this frame member. It is responsible for cable routing, and then also for the ABS bikes, which we don't cite compatibility with for this particular system. On those ABS bikes, the pump is mounted to that bracket. There's an M6 connection, screw connection on there. That bracket is not necessary in racing. I have eliminated it totally, shaved it down to the frame. You can also bang on it with a hammer or whatnot, take pliers, bend it down. That will give you enough clearance. I will illustrate this on another bike that I have that I haven't gone through the frame just yet. We'll jump over to that bike and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. All right, I've superimposed our airbox on the frame more or less where it needs to be. This bike doesn't have a motor in it, so I can't really put it into position all the way, but immediately I see that we are off center here. The brackets for suspension of the airbox to the frame are shifted towards the left side of the bike. So we clearly have interference here between this tab and the nose of the airbox. So how do we combat that? Like I mentioned, on one of our bikes, and subsequently this bike will get the same treatment, we removed this entire tab. It's unnecessary weight. We modify the harness. A lot of this junk isn't here, and we just use one cable tie tied to the frame in this location. We're good. We don't have ABS, no worries there. What can we do about this? Well, if you like this cable management spot, you can just cut across here. If you're like me and you just want maximum mass reduction, I would cut this tab all the way off. So for further processing down the line, I'm going to mark this off for me. I'm getting rid of this. If you guys just want to get crude, quick and dirty, our friend the vice grip works pretty well. Log it on, bend it down. In the intro, I mentioned little to no permanent modification. I don't consider this a permanent modification because we can always bend it back. Now we have plenty of adjustability. We could go all the way across in mirror image of how much we were shifted before. In reality, we'll be somewhere in the center, depending on where the motor's mounted. From one motor mounting procedure to another, we're off by just a little bit. That's just how it happens on these frames. So now we have plenty of access here. So either the pliers or a punch and a hammer to this surface will do the same thing. Let's hop back on the main bike and perform the rest of the installation there. All right, for this next step here, I grabbed the table again to show you guys the pre-configuration of our airbox into an installable version. The airbox comes to you like this. These components are pre-assembled, but the mounting suspension system is in a baggie. So I'll show you how to install this on here so that when we're on the bike, it's nice and easy, just pop it on and screw it in. We will also be taking this sensor from the OEM airbox and installing it in our new one. Also show you how to put these clamps on here and get them ready for installation. I'm gonna grab a Phillips screwdriver and take out this single screw that holds this temperature sensor here in this airbox. Our accepting features are pretty much the same geometry. Just insert it in there, locate the screw center. This is a thread forming screw for thermoplastics, so it'll have some resistance. But the good news is, once you bottom it out and there's no vibration in this sensor, it'll stay there no matter what kind of vibrations you throw at this. Once the sensor is bottomed out and constrained from motion, that's it, that job's complete. Now let's get these brackets on. We've developed these brackets to have a little bit of give, also a little bit of adjustability up and down and left to right on these mounting pads this way. However the motor's sitting in the frame, however that frame was constructed in the factory, there are some tolerances on all these components. The OEM version takes advantage of a rubber grommet here that enables it to move around a little bit. Also frame flex and twist during cornering will move the frame components a little bit. We wanted to give it just a little bit of give, and that's why we've chosen these thermoplastic nylon brackets that have been webbed out to give a little bit of flex. And then also we have rubber grommets here interfacing with the carbon fiber front end. And that way, no matter what the forces are, we won't be propagating those forces to the connection to our throttle bodies. We are dropping one of these countersunk screws into a anodized washer through the bracket on the smaller slot side into the airbox, cap it off with one of the washers and then one of the locking nuts. The nuts have a nylock locking element in them, so we don't really have to get them to bottom out for them not to spin off from vibration. I'm going to use a 4mm Allen from the outside and a 10mm box wrench from the inside. And here I have this pretty loose still, so my intention is to get it tighter than this, but not so tight that it won't move. We want this airbox to be a suspended component. All right, This looks to me like an appropriate amount of movement. There is clear friction in the system, it won't rattle around. And it has a little bit of give. And the nylock element in the locking nut is locked onto the thread and it won't release, and we're good there. I'm going to repeat the procedure on this side. Went a little too aggro on this side, so I'm going to back it off just a little bit. That's looking good. I'm able to adjust it up and down with a considerable amount of force, but when I leave it be, it stays where I left it last. All right, one more thing here. We need to get these clamps around these teeth on our stacks. This is a thermoplastic part. It does have a little bit of flex, but you don't want to stress it. In order not to stress it, we will grab a 3mm Allen and back off on this screw until it pops open. Please be patient with these. Once you fracture one of these, there's really no way to get it back on, and then you won't really lose seal around the throttle body to airbox connection if you just have like one of these busted off, but who wants that? As long as you're patient, you should be good to go. We also want the head accessible from the outside of the bike so that we can tighten it and loosen it. So you have to pay attention to make sure to put the head towards the outside here. Spread this clamp around, get it around the clamping surface of the stack, and then get it back into position so that we can engage the thread. Get the thread on far enough so that this clamp has no way of coming off the clamping surface, but is loose enough that will permit the engagement of our clamping surface to the throttle body. Same procedure from the other side. All right, now we are ready to transfer onto the bike. All right, let's get our stacks mated with the throttle bodies here. I'm going to be very, very gentle. I'm going to get the nose in, make sure that my brackets are somewhat on the same plane. The mounting pads on the brackets are somewhat on the same plane with the frame. That gets me closer everywhere else. And now align the stacks with the throttle bodies and moving it back and forth, fore and aft. Get them seated all the way down. I will grab my 3mm Allen and start tightening down on the clamp here. I press down on the airbox so that it fully seats onto the throttle body before I tighten it down. And once you get enough tightness on here to create friction between the engagement of the stack to our throttle bodies here, you don't want to tighten anymore. If you do over tighten this connection, you will end up fracturing or squishing the actual nylon component that mates with the throttle body, and then it'll likely fail at some point for you. So please be careful. There's not a torque value that I can assign to this connection, so it's really on you to make sure that this is safe. Now, we have our brackets aligned here. This entire airbox will locate itself where it wants to be based on where it sits on the throttle bodies. You don't want to put too much stress on that. Now we'll replace these screws through here. Now these can actually squish this nylon component against the frame. We don't want to do that. I'm going to grab some thread lock here and using medium or low strength thread lock, get that on the threads. This way when we tighten that screw in there, It'll be safe against vibrations, so we don't have to go to the full prescribed torque spec of that particular bolt. Definitely need some means of prevention of removal of this screw by itself from vibrations. The last thing you want is the left one here coming off right into your chain, snapping your chain, or coming off and hitting a buddy in the helmet or something like that, in the shoulder. That doesn't feel good. So I'm gonna skip the torquing procedure here. I would give it at least 10 foot-pounds, but do not exceed 12. All right, that's looking good. I'm gonna plug in my sensor here in the aft section of the airbox. Now I'm gonna get my hoses back on. This is very straightforward. In speaking, in practice, the lower one under here is kind of difficult. That's why we leave our clamp off. We've never actually we've never had it come off. Let me rip this bike apart often enough and inspect it. And choice is yours, really. I'm not advocating one way or another, but just telling you what we do. All right, that's engaged in there. And at this point, the installation of the airbox with no bodywork or tank is complete. From this point forward, you would replace your gas tank, hook it up, replace your bodywork, and then enjoy ripping this thing around after tuning it, right? Cool. I'm pretty much done showing you the installation procedure. What I wanted to illustrate now is how you would go about maintenance of the filter, inspection and maintenance. It is not required to remove the entire airbox. What I recommend doing is just removing these two, and splitting it into two pieces and getting in here. So let's do that now. 12mm socket, removes these two guys. Then we'll need a 4mm Allen key. All right, now I'm going to turn these brackets away from the mounting face to give myself a little bit of clearance to work with. And then I will press in on these tabs from the aft portion. You can see they have a ratcheting, ramping geometry here that fits into interference windows. You need to press down to unlock, and you can separate these two sections. I just find this a little bit easier than removing the stacks from our throttle bodies. And here we can gain access to the filter, lift it up and out of the way. This one's nice and clean and pre-oiled. You either grab one of your drop-in replacements if you chose to purchase a spare one, or you would go about cleaning this and re-oiling it just like any other aftermarket high-performance foam filter. Here at the shop, we have the MWR performance oils and detergents for servicing these. K&N also makes a decent product. I think any of those will work. We've tested this with the K&N oils and also using dish detergent for the cleaning procedure. What you don't want to do is spray a bunch of high compressed air through here. You will damage the cells of the foam, and at that point you won't be actually capturing much of the debris. So once you're done with that, it's just a reverse order of disassembly. You can go ahead and disassemble this further, or whatever your flavor is. This is just how I go about this. Everything tabs in, and then we basically, with this mounted in there, we have the bottom clips have to engage first, and then the top clips go in, and ultimately they will snap in to their windows, and then you replace these screws. Let's go ahead and do that now. Now on the way back here, realize that you are threading into an aluminum thread. We have an insert that is riv nutted into this thermoplastic piece. It is made of aluminum. Make sure you don't over torque it. I also recommend using a low to medium strength thread locking compound on this connection. All right, this is good to go. At this point, these screws go back in, get them tightened down, and then we can be off to the races, off to the dyno, off to a track day, whatever your flavor is. I think that after installing this, you will have a giant smile on your face because you will unlock new potential previously not available to you from this bike without this system. All right, guys, that's pretty much it for our installation guide here. If you like what you see here, check out tstindustries.com. We have these airboxes ready to go for you. Also, check out our feature video. Like I mentioned in the intro, that video will actually delve into the details of the performance characteristics of this airbox system. Thank you for watching. Hopefully I'll see you at the races. Peace.